pork diagram video. Welcome back to the Bearded Butcher's YouTube channel. Behind me, you see 2 halves of pork. We're gonna set these down on our table. We're gonna trace them out. We're gonna do a diagram. We're gonna be doing 2 different halves, 2 different ways. One's gonna be boneless, one's gonna be bone-in. Should be a fun one. If you're a visual learner, you see things like this. If you're the person that flips through a magazine and you only look at the pictures, I'm kind of that way. This video is going to be for you because you're going to be able to better educate yourself on pork cuts, where they come from. So next time you go to the grocery store, you go into your local butcher, you go to a restaurant, you order a cut, you want a particular item, you're going to know exactly where it comes from on a pig. Let's just get started. So we have both halves laying on the table. We have them all traced out. Next step's gonna be taking these halves, moving them over to our prep table. We're gonna start breaking things down. We're gonna go to the saw. We're gonna go to our layout table, and then Scott's gonna be moving things over into place. Before we get started, I wanted to touch on something just briefly. You can see that these pigs, both halves, we removed the hide. So we do a skinning process here where we actually hand skin everything. You can see these are knife strokes on here. So we do remove the hide. Just to clear that up, if you scald a pig, you get the skin on and then you remove the hair. We don't do that. We do skin our pigs here. So if you're wondering, the hide has been removed. So let's just get started, Scott. First half's going on our cutting table. Second half's going back on the rail. Time to get started on the first half. The first half we're going to do bone in, second half we're going to do boneless. We start by pulling our leaf lard out. This is all going to get saved. So we render a lot of lard down here, or we add it to venison trim and stuff like that. It is available on our website, so if you want some pork fat, go to the website and grab some. Just want to trim these glands and some of this excess fat off. Cut right down here by this flank. So let's just go over half a pig real quick. We have the shoulder. So this is the bone side up, vertebrae up, which would have been attached to this side right here. So we have the shoulder, the rib, the belly is on the underside here. We have the loin, and then we have the ham. So that's your half a pig, and we'll start breaking it down. Let's start by breaking off this ham. We want to go right below that H-bone, but in front of that sirloin. Make a cut down to that bone, and then we'll just take our 6-inch Victorinox and just cut that ham all the way off. So bone-in version first, and that's going to include a bone-in ham. Pretty simple process. So here you have the whole ham. It has the hock on it. It has the H-bone, femur, everything's left in this ham. So the only thing I'm going to do is take off a little bit of the end of this hock. So there is a bone-in ham, and this would be ready for the curing and smoking process. Time to move this half over onto our bandsaw. We're going to start with taking off the shoulder. Typically 3 bones between the 3rd and 4th bone. We're going to make a cut. removing that entire shoulder. Now what we're going to do is separate the loin from the rib and belly. Now that I have all three of these pieces, we can just get started going down through and trimming out each piece. All right, so pork belly, I'm going to score that membrane. We'll peel that off later. Let's extract these full rack of spare ribs out of here. So on this first half, I'm just going to do a full rack of ribs. So stay nice and tight to those bones, leaving some nice meaty bacon. So there's a full rack of pork spare ribs. And here's your first belly for some bacon. This will get cured and smoked. So there's your pork belly for bacon. There's your full rack of ribs, and there's some trimming for sausage. So I made this score right here through that membrane. Now what I want to do is just take my meat hook, get underneath that membrane, and just peel it out like that. So that's a full rack of pork spare ribs ready for the smoker. On to the bone-in pork loin. First step is we want to take this exterior fat off, remembering that the fat does get saved. So we just do some pre-trimming on these, and then we'll move to our bandsaw and we'll get this cut up into some loin butt roast, some bone-in chops, and some country style ribs. We're going to cut a pork loin. This one's going to be bone-in as mentioned. So the first step that I'm going to do, square that loin butt roast up a little bit, and then we're going to cut some country style ribs off of this loin. Country style ribs are 4 ribs long. So we will further process these in a little bit, and I'll show you how to do that. Next step, we're going to get started cutting some nice thick pork chops. So these are your rib end pork chops, bone in. Now let's do some, these are considered the loin chops. They're going to have a portion of the tenderloin in them. So that's your rib chop and that's your loin chop. All the way down here to the end where you can start to see a little bit of that hip bone. And there you have a loin butt roast left on the end. So we'll just get these stacked up. We have loin chops and rib chops. Let's cut some country style ribs. So I'm going to start by taking that membrane off. Going to use our 8-inch Victorinox, remove those backbones. Now there is a little piece of the shoulder blade. I always take this out right here. I want that left in there. That's kind of a soft bone. Now we just cut this whole section in half, and we're going to have 4 bone-in country ribs, which are these, Nice little stack of country ribs. Those have the bones in them. Now these, off the other side, are not going to have any bones. So there you have two nice portions of country style ribs going into our diagram. All right, pork shoulder. So we have the shank, we have the picnic, and then we have the butt. So shank, picnic, butt. I know it doesn't make any sense that this is called a butt when it comes from the shoulder. You'd think that this would be the butt, but that's not the case. The reason for that being is that the pioneers, they used to transport this portion of the shoulders around wooden barrels, and the barrels were called butts. So that's where the name came from. You can Google it. But we're going to start by removing this neck bone out of here. Neck bones can be saved, they can be smoked, they can be added to beans. Fantastic flavor. You can add them to spaghetti sauce. So we'll do some further trimming on that neck bone, but we'll get that out of there. Next step, we're going to remove this excess fat. This is called the jowl right here. So you may find some smoked jowl in the store. That's a pork jowl. Now what we want to do is just remove some of this exterior fat. This is fantastic cut for smoking. The butt portion being the most popular part to smoke. This is the portion that has that blade bone in there. So if you go into the grocery store or a butcher shop and you want to make some pulled pork, tell them that you want a pork shoulder butt roast. So there you have the whole pork shoulder trimmed out, the butt, the picnic, the shank. We're going to move it over to our saw and we're going to cut it up just a little bit more. All right, onto our bandsaw. That's the front shank. That'll go over onto our table. Let's separate the picnic from the butt. So this is a picnic roast. We're going to go ahead and cut this in half. We're going to make two nice, say 3-pound roasts. This is the butt. Square it up a little bit. And I think we're just going to leave this one as a whole piece. So if you have a butt roast, it'd be a really nice chunk to throw in the smoker. It's about an 8-pound chunk. And then we have those arm. I'm going to do a little bit more trimming on these. So we just want to remove a little of this excess. Hangs off these roasts. That portion will go into some sausage. So there you have a nice arm roast. Do the same thing with this one. So there you have two real nice pork arm roasts. We have that butt. Let's just build this thing back together real quick. So there you have whole pork shoulder. Pork shank, pork arm roast, pork butt. There's our jowl, country ribs, got our spare rib. These are all our rib chops. We got our loin chops. We got our belly. We got our loin butt roast. And last, we got our bone-in pork ham. First half's on our table. So this was the bone-in style. Scott did a fantastic job getting it all laid out, as you can see. We'll do a further overview here towards the end of the video. But until then, Scott's going to work on some trimmings over here, and then I'm going to get started on the second half, which is going to be our boneless half.
It's going to be really important to detail, and I'll show you the trimmings that go into your pork sausage from a bone-in half, especially from this ham, are going to be significantly different in total weight and volume than the boneless half, which we're going to be doing next. Over the years, we found a way to do a different configuration that gives us more sausage. So when I trim out this first half that's bone in, you're going to see a lot fewer trimmings than what we'll see on the second half, which is boneless. I've got in front of me our most popular bratwurst flavors that we make here at White Feather Meats. Any combination that we have in front of you is going to build out those 7 most popular selling flavors. These are absolutely amazing. Add any protein you want. It could be pork, it could be your venison, it could be a mixture of both. You can do beef, whatever you've got available to you. You use these bratwurst kits, you're going to have some awesome tasting bratwurst.
On to the second half. So we're going to repeat the process initially on this breakdown, but when we get into the cuts is where you're going to see a difference. We're going to do the boneless style. So just do a little bit of pre-trimming on here. So similar to the other side, just getting this cleaned up. And then we will start breaking it down. Start by taking the ham off. So on the ham, I'm going to be doing this a little bit different too. I'm going to be making it pretty much a boneless ham with the hock left on it. So you'll see me do that slightly different than the last one. The last one we just did a whole bone-in ham. First step, take the end of our hock off. Now we want to make this like a semi-boneless ham. We're going to start by removing this H-bone off the end here. And Scott mentioned the sausage amounts. You're going to see why just the different cutting styles produces, you know, more sausage over the other. So you're going to see why. Start by getting that H-bone out of there. Now I just want to follow up that femur bone. There's a joint right there. I want to find that joint because we want to leave the hock on this ham. We make this style ham in the store. People really seem to enjoy it because it's a smaller version of the bone-in one that you saw, and it just makes a really nice ham. So that got that knuckle out of there, got that femur out of there. And what we're left with is just this real nice 12 to 14 pound typically of a boneless ham, except for the hock portion, which still has the bone in it right here. So that's what we would call a semi-boneless pork ham. And then this portion right here, you can see this is going to go over to the boning table, and this is going to give us additional sausage. Let's net a pork ham. So first step is to grab our stuffing horn, then we grab our netting. You just go over the end of the stuffing horn. You want to leave a little bit hanging off the end. That way you have something to hook your hook to that goes into the smokehouse. Now we're going to go hock end in first. And we just push this ham through this horn. And what that does is that keeps a nice uniform chunk of meat through the entire curing process, and then you can hang it in your smokehouse just like that. Time for that second shoulder. Just get it broke off here. There's the shoulder. Let's separate that loin from the belly just like we did on the other half. we'll just get started going down through each piece. Onto that second belly and rib. So the first one I did a full rack of ribs. This one I'm going to be doing just a little bit different. These are going to be St. Louis style ribs, and I'll show you what makes them a St. Louis style rib. First step is just getting those ribs extracted off of that belly, just like that. Let's square this up. A lot of people want to know why we trim these products like this. They think that we're wasting this stuff. We're not. That's certainly not waste. That's going into pork sausage. So, and the reason why we square things up is so that when we put our slab after it's been smoked into our bacon slicer, you have nice even slices going into your package. So for everybody that's thinking that this is waste, it's certainly not waste. It's going into pork sausage, and that's belly for bacon. Now on to this rib. We're doing St. Louis style, and if you remember on the first half, we left this whole just for a full rack of ribs. And what makes this St. Louis style is when you cut the bottom portion of these little riblets off right through that soft cartilage, and what you're left with is a chunk of ribs, nice and squared up, that looks like this, and that's your St. Louis style ribs. All right, on to the second loin. This first step is the same process, just removing this additional back fat. I'm just gonna get this taken off of here. And then what I am gonna be doing different on this is I'm gonna be making this loin boneless. So, and when you make it boneless, you do get a couple of different cuts. You get some baby back ribs that you typically wouldn't get if you left the bone in for bone-in chops. So I'll show you the process of making boneless chops and baby back ribs out of this section. So to make this boneless, first step, we want to pull this pork tenderloin out of here. So just follow that vertebrae out, pull that whole pork tenderloin out, just like that. We are going to do a little bit of trimming on it. Take that chain off of there. So that's a whole pork tenderloin. Now what we want to do is we want to take this sirloin off. That's what we call the loin butt roast on the other half. Now I'm just going to make it boneless. We're going to make a nice boneless roast. I think what we'll do with this is just go ahead and cut it into some pork sirloin steaks. Since we did a bone-in roast on the other half, this one we'll do some boneless sirloin steaks. Just a real nice option for a pork steak. Next step. So if you remember, we did country style ribs on the other half. We're not going to do that on this one because we want to get more boneless chops. So we want to start by just removing the loin out of here. And this is where your baby back ribs come from. So you're going to see that that's going to be a little bit different option on this half since we're making everything boneless. So there, I'll trim those down a little bit more into some baby back ribs. This portion is that boneless pork loin that we're going to cut into some chops. So we have pork tenderloin, the sirloin chops. This will be the baby back ribs, and these are the boneless pork chops. So we're just going to go down through, cut these about 1 inch thick, and make some nice boneless pork chops. So pork tenderloin, pork sirloin steaks, and then those boneless loin chops. That's the bone-in version, and we're just gonna add them to our table.
That is a whole lot of chops.
That is a whole lot of chops. I think I said bone-in version. That's the boneless version, so just to correct myself. But everybody's talking about how their stomach's growling, and we were commenting on it was making our stomachs growl even more cutting these chops. Thinking about maybe putting some Bearded Butcher ranch seasoning on those and throwing them on the grill. Tasty. All right, pork baby back ribs. You can see I left a little bit of meat on those, and that was intentional, just so the ribs, were just a little bit meatier. So next step, get them over on the bandsaw. Remove the bottom portion of that rib. Remove the top portion of that rib. Now we want to peel the membrane. And that's a pork baby back rib. And you only get these if you make that loin boneless like I just did. So just periodically I'm going through and I'm honing my 6-inch Victorinox, which everybody should know by now we use the heck out of these blades. But occasionally, they hold a great edge, but occasionally you do have to just what we call tune them up a little bit. We have this as a set on our website. It's called Seth's Favorite Knife Set. Comes with the knife, the honing rod, and a sheath, a Kydex sheath. So I recommend you go grab one. They're great. So we want to start by taking this neck bone out just like we did on the last shoulder. I am going to be doing this shoulder slightly different though than the last one. So you'll see. Get that neck bone out of there. Let's get this jowl off of there. There's always a gland right here. You want to get that gland out. We always remove it in all of our pork roasts. Nobody wants that gland in their pulled pork. Now, just take some of this cover fat off. And there's your entire pork shoulder. Just like the last one, there's the shank, there's the picnic, there's the butt. This one we're going to cut up just a little bit different. Let's cut this pork shoulder slightly different than the last one. Remove the shank. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut some pork shoulder steaks. These are arm steaks. Now we want to cut some blade steaks. So those are pork arm steaks and those are pork shoulder blade steaks. So I am going to leave a portion of this shoulder as a roast. So we're going to make it boneless and we're going to net it. So there's the butt for a boneless roast. Here's your shoulder blade steaks. Here's your shoulder arm steaks. And then there's that shank. I do need to do a little bit of trimming on these. Not so much on the blade steaks, but on the arm steaks I do need to do some trimming. Just make them presentable for the package. You may not find pork shoulder steaks in all of your butcher shops and grocery stores. They have popularity in different parts of the country just based on the demographic of folks that request them and know what they are. So let's make a boneless pork shoulder butt roast. So I want to take the remaining little piece of that shoulder blade out of there, just like that. Grab our stuffing horn. These are super handy for the smoker. You can leave this netting on them, and you can put this right in the Yoder smoker. Season it up with maybe some Hollywood Bearded Butcher Blend seasoning, and that's just an awesome little chunk to smoke and make some pulled pork.
Pork shank. We've got our arm roast, or excuse me, our arm steaks. Got our chuck steaks, or blade steaks. I'm thinking beef. Blade steaks. Our boneless butt roast. Got a jowl. We've got our rib chop portion. We've got our loin chop portion. Got our baby back rib. We've got our tenderloin. Got our spare rib. And we've got our belly. Our sirloin chops. And our boneless ham.
Second half's been laid on the table. As you're gonna see, we're gonna do an overview here in a little bit. We did this second half slightly different than we did the first, but now we want to take everything that Scott's worked on, trimming out the fat, the bone, the trimmings, and we're gonna get those laid onto our table next. An entire pig diagram is on the table. As you saw, we did it two different ways. Starting on this half, we did some shoulder steaks, we did a boneless butt, we did those boneless chops, some sirloins, we have the tenderloin, the baby backs, the St. Louis, the belly for bacon, and that boneless ham. On this half, we did the shank, the jowl, we have some shoulder roasts, we did country style ribs, bone-in chops, a sirloin, the butt roast, we have a bone-in ham, and we have that belly for bacon, and then a full spare rib. Scott added all of our trimmings, our fat, our bones, neck bones, etc. to the table. This is your total overview on what you get from a whole pig.
So I'm gonna get you into the full yields, but I wanna point out, so we have a bone-in half closest to us, and that's the most common custom cutout. So one of the things that you get is a lot of ham and not a lot of sausage. One of the big things that we've done over the years is we've tweaked our cutting style. I have 8.3 pounds of trimmings for sausage here. Now I can take a little bit of the fat, put it into the sausage. And oh, by the way, this is the fat trimming from the carcass. This is the actual kidney fat here. That's preferred for like your pastry soot. It's more of a cleaner soot, but all of this can be made into soot. 8.3 pounds of sausage trimmings, because most of this is intact. And that's kind of an easier way to cut it out. But you put that in your freezer, you don't have a lot of sausage. Now over here on the boneless cutout, you're gonna see by taking the more of the bone out and then also doing our boneless version of the ham, we've got 20.5 pounds of trimmings. Now, and those are leaner too because we've used some of the ham, so I'm gonna be able to put even more fat in there. So that's probably gonna be closer to like 25 pounds for sausage. So you see that our sausage went up almost 3 times by just kind of tweaking that cutout. So for us, that gives us better choice of sausage. But if you get your pig home and you say, where's all my sausage? The chances are that it's more intact, like this cut here. Let's take you over to the yields. I'll show you exactly how much of it's cut, how much of it's fat, and how much of it was waste. Okay, so here's your yield. Pig started out weighing 203 pounds carcass hanging weight. That was the hot hanging carcass when it went into the cooler. We were left with a total of 166 pounds of basically what we consider packaged eating meat. So that includes all the cuts and the trimmings. That's about 82%. Now, it does not include the fat, and you might be able to say that the fat itself is also an edible product, of course, when rendered into lard. There was 16 pounds of fat. So you could add that to your 166 pounds if you so desired. The great thing is about pigs, they basically turn vegetables into bacon, and so they grow fairly quick, and that makes them a good homesteader type animal because you can grow them quick, you're going to get a good yield. And the different halves break down as follows. So we talked about the trim when we did the overview. One of the advantages of doing more of a boneless or bone out is you get more trim. On our bone-in pig, our total package cuts were 77 pounds. And then the bones off of that were only 3.8 pounds because more bones were in the product. You had a little bit over a pound of just kind of like the spinal cord and glands and bloody neck meat that can't really be used. And then about 8 pounds of fat. And then your 8.3 or about 8.5 pounds of trim. So that was that bone-in half. The boneless half, we had about 60 pounds of cuts, and then we had 8.6 pounds of bones. Again, about 8 pounds of fat. Again, a little bit of the offal meat, and then 20.5 pounds of trim. So that all adds up to about 198 pounds. And then you have your evaporation loss in that pig hung in the cooler. We lost about 5 pounds. Not bad, about 2.5%. So there are your numbers. Hope you enjoyed it. Back to the overview.
There you saw the entire pig diagram video. We hope you enjoyed it. We did the beef video diagram. We did the lamb video diagram. We can throw some links into those if you haven't seen those yet. We're working our way through the different species. Venison's coming next, maybe an elk. We'd love to do a bison. And we're just gonna work our way through. This has been a fun series. We hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
That's right. Thanks for watching The Bearded Butchers right here on YouTube. Remember, stay subscribed if you want to stay up to date. Click the bell. Appreciate it. Throw a comment below if you liked the video. We'll see you next time.
Until next time, see ya.